Good morning guys, and welcome back to the channel. So it's Monday morning and I've come into a whole world of chaos here. So where do we start? First of all, we've had this engine come in from a friend of ours, Ben. This is out of his 1275 Mini. Really nice car. The engine's just in for a little bit of a birthday and to fit some fairly trick bits. So he's got an uprated cam, a vernier pulley and all the rest of it there. Obviously we're going to do the rebore, go through the cylinder head, grind the crank and fully balance it. It's got a new clutch and a light and flywheel and that to go in. But as I say, this thing's come in first thing this morning, and I did promise him to take the gearbox off this morning and get it to him because he's got a guy that's going to rebuild that. So that one's stripped already. So no rest for the wicked this morning. So secondly, as you can see, we've got a chuffing great boat engine here. So this is a Ford, New Holland Ford boat engine out of a charter boat. It's actually a friend of mine that owns the boat down in Ilfracombe, and these have come out for a bit of a service really. We were sort of toying with rebuilding them, and when I say them, as you can see, we've got another one over there. Absolute beauties. They weigh about 850 kilos each, dressed, which is putting our little crane to the test. But yeah, so these are in for a service. So what we're going to do is, I think the main reason he's took them out is there's a couple of little mods he wants to do. We've got a leaky sump gasket on one. We were going to go through these, but I think they've done about 10,000 hours. And according to a specialist, he said that these are sort of good for 40,000 hours. And if it's not creating any issues, as in sort of using water or smoking or using oil or whatever, then it's a case of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I think what we're going to do, we're going to pull the heat exchangers off. We're going to take the pump and injectors off. He's going to get the heat exchanger sorted himself. We are going to, as I say, take the pump and injectors out, get those serviced, and give it a bloody good clean up. We're going to sort a bit of wiring out. We're going to have a look. I think he said that he's got a bit of a issue here where the gearbox goes on, so we've got to have a little look at that. And as I say, we're going to pull. What I'm going to do is pull the sump off. I'm probably going to have a look at a couple of big ends and a main if I can, and just see what the bearings look like. And if they're, you know, nothing disastrous in there, we're going to certainly just leave that alone. Put the sump on, new gasket. He wants the engines painted grey, so I think we're going to go for, you know, a classic sort of light grey colour, like some of the tractor engines are, and just makes it easier to see any oil or water leaks or anything like that in the future. He's got, I think he wants to put some new oil pressure switches on there. It did have, I think recently they did have new alternators and tensioners and belts and what have you, but I shall probably send the alternator off to be just serviced. And because the trouble is with the boat engines is, you know, we've been involved with them plenty of times in the past, but it's not so much doing them while they're here, but it's actually looking after them while they're in the boat, because you literally can't get at them. I think he said that these lie just below the deck and they both run at the same time, so it's not that one's a spare, but literally I think the deck is sort of here and there's no hatch, so you can't get at them. So I think what he's going to do is mod the deck, make a couple of hatches so you can at least get down there. But yeah, as I say, simple enough engine, straight six Ford engine basically, just sort of modded for marine use. But it's just the weight of them, you know, nice and simple sort of setup. But yeah, just the weight. It's the weight of everything. But then I suppose it's no different in the commercial world. It's just not what we're used to, I suppose. A bit spoilt really with stuff on the bench, the little car stuff. So yeah, we've got those come in. But if you have a look over here, so what was a big hole in the front of that Audi is no longer. We've got the engine back in, so obviously the turbo turned up. I showed you that on a previous video. We've got the engine in and topped it up with fluids. We've bled the clutch because it's hydraulic clutch. And yeah, so fingers crossed. I mean, it's always a bit nerve-wracking with something like this, because obviously we've took the motor out, we've completely stripped it, every last nut and bolt, and put it all back together with the forged pistons and H-section rods. So yeah, it's always a bit nerve-wracking, because you never know. You know, it does run through your head every time you do one that you've put every nut and bolt together. And weirdly enough, every time you turn the key and the car fires up, you sort of stand back in amazement. But yeah, it's just one of them. But yeah, so we're going to go ahead and start this thing up. Obviously, make sure the oil pressure and all that's all right. So yeah, see if it fires up. Right, here we go. Oh.
See if you can see the question.
Where's the key then?
There in the hole.
Carlos looking a bit nervous. Yeah, we got a clutch. So there we go. First fire up. Right, so the main reason for this video, as you can see here, we have the TR300 Lister engine, and the last time I had this in a video it was sort of fully built, but as you can see it's all stripped again. And the reason for that is that the customer went away, got a new crankshaft. As I said to you before, you've seen the crankshaft was broke on one end, so he had to replace the crank. Now, what's happened is he's took the crank, the old crank, he's dealt with a place to get a new crank, but what he's done, and we didn't know this until we'd actually come to put all the barrels on, but he's gone away and he's identified it and asked for a TS crank, which is different to the TR crank. The TS has got a shorter stroke, very slightly, smaller bore, and what all the other differences I don't know. But so we've gone and fitted the crank, which is not easy on this, and obviously visually it looks the same. So obviously we sort of inspect it, and obviously we didn't have the other one to check, but we've fitted it, we've put the rods in and put the barrels on, and we've noticed that the pistons sit about 10 mil, something like that, below the top of the bore. So that's no good. We've had to strip it again. The customer's took it away and he's got to go and get a TR crank. So that is why it's in bits. So very annoying. It's one of those where, you know, the customer took the old one, so we've had nothing to sort of go by, but whose fault is it really? You know, I suppose he's gone and asked for the wrong crank, but it's in today's day and age, we've fitted it, so we're gonna, you know, we're just gonna sort of sort it out at the end really, but he's okay about it. I think it was more so the time scale really. But yeah, so once we get the new crank, we shall get that back together. So, done all the checks, check the fluid levels, etc. Give it a good eyeball, and yeah, he's all running all right. So just going to take it outside now, give it a wash, and then Carlos is going to check it over again and then take it for a test drive, I expect. Yeah, all good news so far. there with our ramp in the back. We're gonna have to try and find another home for our press over there, I think. Straight. There we go. Hold on, mate. Yeah, a bit dusty. Probably one of the noisiest 2 litres I've heard on idle. But yeah, let's have a little look over it. Okay, so Carlos has just come back from his test drive. So we've given it a wash and everything's all right. He seems to have, he's done I think he's done about 10-15 miles in it. He's going to just check the fluids and what have you again, and yeah, nothing seems to be untoward. No smoking, no nothing like that, no funny noises. So I think what we're going to do at this stage is say once everything's checked, we shall probably stick it through an MOT for the customer. Hopefully, if it all goes well, he can take this away and run it in for the next sort of 500 miles before we get it set up. Because as I say, the only things we've done apart from rebuild the engine and refresh the bearings, etc., is we put different pistons in which are very slightly higher compression, obviously different rods which don't really matter, but it has got a Borg-Warner hybrid turbo on it, so obviously this thing once set up should be good for about 380 horsepower. So yeah, all being well, we're all sorted here, and another job well done. Right guys, remember to like, subscribe and comment down below anything you're interested to put down there and say. I'll be happy to read. And until another video, take care, goodbye.